Finally, our last presentation for the afternoon is entitled Investigating How Teachers Assess the Trustworthiness of Online Information. The lead researchers are Teacher Junette and Teacher Lorina. Teacher Lorina being the co-convener of the Education Research Program. And accompanying them is Karen Angela Hernandez. Sorry, Karen. Hernandez. So please take the stage and thank you very much. Welcome them.
Thank you, Teacher Dina, and good afternoon to all participants of SIPAT Education. In one webinar on disinformation, one of the questions asked during the open forum was, what if teachers were the ones sharing fake news? Part of the reply was, well, that would be problematic. It is indeed problematic as teachers are expected to teach digital literacy. Of course, we hope that teachers would not be spreaders of fake news, but we cannot just hope. We start hoping after we have done something, or at least help them get that skill of digital competence. And so as a start, our paper looks at how teachers assess online information, whether or not they are able to critically evaluate any information they encounter on social media. Here's the outline of our presentation. I will do the first part. Karen will present the research method, and Junette the findings and recommendations. We all know that fake news or false information shared mistakenly or deliberately has fundamentally become part of our online environment. It has become a serious concern as false narratives shared on social media impacts the results of elections in different countries. It benefited Donald Trump in the US 2016 election. It put Bongbong Marcos back to Malacanang, and similarly, backed up the candidacy of Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil in 2018. In Indonesia, negative campaigning, or as they call it, hoaxes, characterized the 2019 election. And though President Joko Widodo was re-elected, riots fueled by hoaxes took place in Jakarta following the official announcement of his victory. The Ministry of Communication and Information Technology had to implement a 3-day curb on social media to calm the situation. In the 2017 Korean presidential election, fake news led to voter polarization, where confrontation is between ruling party versus opposition party, progressives versus conservatives, young versus old people. What makes people fall for fake news? Or why are most people vulnerable to false information? Psychologists explain that because of confirmation bias, people will believe in information, whether valid or not, if it agrees with their own existing beliefs. In the context of politics, this means that when a person is presented with false information, he or she will likely judge it as true if it favors or supports her or his political ideology. Other experts, however, explain that people fall for fake news not because of their political bias, but because of their cognitive ability. That is, people with lower cognitive ability would not be able to discern true from false information. On another point, it is argued that it is not the measure of people's cognitive ability, but their failure to engage in analytic thinking that makes them more susceptible to fake news. They reiterated that when people are given time to deliberate on a given misinformation, they will be able to discern it accurately and will not fall for fake news. Another study contends that mistrust in institutions is linked to belief in disinformation, such that the less a person trusts mainstream media and political institutions, the more he or she will believe online disinformation. Lastly, social media algorithm works in such a way that it remembers the kind of content we interact with And based on those signals, it will feed similar content on our page. So if we are into fake news, we will receive all related fake news to our account. This we call filter bubbles and echo chambers, making a person less critical of information because people are more likely to believe something the more often it is repeated to them. As mentioned earlier, digital literacy is primarily mandated to schools, and teachers are delegated the responsibility to equip students with such skill. Current literature focus on strategies, resources, including fact-checking sites and internet applications that will support teacher instruction. But as a basic inquiry, we need to know how teachers evaluate online information because teachers who are expected to teach young people how to fight for truth should by themselves have the competence to identify reliable from misleading information. Our paper intends to determine how teachers perform in assessing the trustworthiness of online information, investigate results of their performance in terms of the following factors, and identify common mistakes for trusting and not trusting an online post. I will now turn you over to Karen for the presentation of our research method. Thank you very much.
For the second part, I will discuss the methodology of our research. In order to achieve the research aims stated by teacher Lorina, we follow the Stanford History Education Group or SHEG's curriculum and assessment framework on civic online reasoning. Its core competencies are centered around the premise of assessing the trustworthiness of online information by the following. First is determine who is behind the information, ang pagtatanong ng kanino nanggaling ang impormasyon o kung ito ay nanggaling sa social media, sino ang nag-post at ano kaya ang motibo nito. Next is evaluating the evidence presented and investigating if it supports the claims made. Ano ba ang ebidensya na pinakita niya? May kinalaman ba ang mga litrato at video sa mga sinabi niya? Totoo ba ang mga ito or edited? Third, finding out what other sources say. It includes the ability to identify more reliable resources or sources and to check whether the original post is reliable or not, or is it true or not. These three competencies are integrated across their assessment tasks and serve as basis for our research design and assessment activity. For the research process, our first main activity was developing the instrument and tools based on the COR or the Civic Online Reasoning. We tried the tools with our volunteer teachers and revised it based on their feedback. The second, we implemented our data collection through series of workshops on fighting disinformation. Prior to the actual workshop, we trained facilitators on the use of tools and instruments, and during the workshop, participants were asked to accomplish several tasks on assessing the credibility of posts online. And the third and the last one, we consolidated, processed, and analyzed the data collected from the participants of our workshop. The workshop was online via Zoom, which we conducted in 5 batches starting January 2022 up to May 2022, bringing in a total of more than 800 participants. And for this study, we only collected responses from teacher participants who agreed and accomplished all the activities. Thus, we have 112 responses. Our workshop is divided into 2 parts. The first is the plenary and the second is the breakout session. At the start of the plenary session, a quick survey was given to the participants. Then for both sessions, participants were asked to answer an online activity with 6 tasks on evaluating online information, which was immediately followed by a discussion by the lead researchers and trade facilitators. The survey and assessment activities were both conducted via Google Forms. At the beginning of each, participants were asked to accomplish a consent form before they can proceed to the next part of the questionnaire. The survey consists of questions asking to identify how often they encounter fake news and how confident they are in identifying false information online, and to select trusted sources from a list of reputable and non-reputable online pages and sources. The participant age and current location demographics were also collected. The assessment activities each contain 6 constructed response tasks on evaluating the trustworthiness of actual posts and websites found online following the assessments developed by Shed. Participants were asked to assess if these were reliable and explain their response. So this table gives us an overview of the tasks given. The first column shows the competency from Shed. The second gives the objective of each task, and the third column shows the number. So the letters A and B stand for activity. So A for the first activity and B for the second activity, which means similar tasks were given in each set for every objective. For example, a task involves determining who is behind the information aims to make participants explain why a sponsored article or a post made by a campaign supporters might make their claims less trustworthy. These can be found in Activity 1 in plenary and Activity 2 in breakout. Another a task in finding out what other sources say is to explain whether an article in a website is reliable using any resources found in the internet. This task is also found in both activities, but with different websites to work on. This is a screenshot of the Google Form survey questionnaire. For the analysis of data, the researchers extracted and cleaned data from Google Forms and removed duplicates. Assigned code per respondent, removed any personal identifiers, name and email, matched the survey activity 1 and 2 for each respondent. For the data analysis, we conducted an iterator scoring to evaluate the responses, whether it is correct, partial, or incorrect. We analyzed data per task and variable and looked for themes and categorized responses. Now I will give the floor to Junette to discuss the findings of the study.
Thank you, Karen. Our first research aim is to determine how teachers perform in assessing the trustworthiness of online information. This table shows us the percent of teacher responses at each score level per task. The blue parts show those who answered correctly, thus earning a full credit. Red for those with partial or partially correct responses. The rest, in light gray, reflected incorrect or irrelevant strategies for assessing online information. Almost all teachers successfully accomplished the first task to identify signifiers or verification badges in social media. On the other hand, almost all struggled in the remaining 5 tasks, with less than a quarter of the responses earning full credit. Furthermore, the highest proportion of incorrect responses, with over 50% of the responses earning no points, can be seen in task A2, which is to explain why a sponsored or paid article would make claims less trustworthy. So let us see a screenshot of task A2, where successful respondents recognize the labels, branded content, and explain how the sponsorship of the article may provide nuanced claims kahit na the website itself, Inquirer, is reliable. A similar trend is found in the next set of tasks, with identifying signifiers having the highest proportion of correct responses. However, majority still didn't earn full credit on the other 5 tasks. Task B6 had the lowest percent of combined correct and partial responses for Activity 2. The task assessed whether the respondents could explain whether a website is reliable or not, with a prompt to look for other more reliable sources found in the internet. Task B6 shows a website about a tree octopus, convincing and professional looking ang website, with all of the images, links, and research data, pero bogus lahat ito at hindi totoo. Kaya kailangan lumabas ng website at mag-search for more reliable sources. The second aim of this study is to investigate performance across survey results. For this analysis, we assigned a numerical value for each correct and partially correct responses, then computed for the aggregate percent scores of the respondents. We categorized these scores into 2 groups, scores 50% below, and above 50%. This table presents the number of respondents who have a total score of below and above 50% clustered according to their age groups. The yellow are those who scored 50% and below, and in green are those who received higher scores. For ages 21 to 30 and 31 to 40, more respondents scored over 50%. However, with the last two age cohorts, the opposite can be seen with 2/3 scoring 50% and below. We then asked the respondents how frequently they think they encounter false or misleading information online. The two respondents who said that they have never or seldom encountered false news online both have scores 50% and below, while the majority of the respondents who said they have sometimes and often encounter fake news have scores above 50%. We also asked the respondents to identify their trusted sources of news and information. Majority of those who identified fact-checking sites, print and online newspapers, and TV and radio news channels scored more than 50%. However, there were more respondents who scored below 50% from those who don't think any of the mentioned sources were reliable. The third aim of our study is to investigate incorrect reasons for trusting or not trusting a post. A common mistake is when it mentions one's own existing beliefs instead of a reason that makes a post trustworthy or not. For example, a respondent said, "The subject often says the same thing," or "I know that these are common symptoms," but it does not actually say why the post is reliable. Another incorrect response is to say that the source is not reliable when referring to legitimate mainstream media. Also, a common mistake is when they cite irrelevant elements and evidences. For example, respondents trust an infographic with logos of reliable sources. However, images can be edited easily. Another, they said they believed a website with names of researchers and with no grammatical errors. However, websites can bluff the names and researches in their websites. They can even hire professional editors to make their websites more credible. Participants also seem to fail when the post favors their political ideology. For example, the source is a supporter of a reliable politician, therefore, post is reliable. But actually, the respondent was not able to identify the motive or conflict of interest that might make the post less trustworthy. Another example, some look for other sources to validate the information provided. However, the sources that they used were unreliable, therefore, also untrue. Almost half of the participants were not able to evaluate and explain whether a post is trustworthy or not. In terms of demographics, older participants ages 41 to 60 seem to have more difficulty in assessing posts online. Those who trust traditional mainstream media and legitimate fact-checking sites are more likely to successfully evaluate an online post than those who do not trust any of these sources. Awareness of the spread of false information online may help reduce vulnerability to false information. Common mistakes for trusting or not trusting a post include immediately believing a post that confirms one's existing beliefs or favors political ideology, questions irrelevant elements, and using unreliable sources to validate. Overall, there is an urgent need to support teachers in digital literacy and in evaluating online information. As social media algorithms and technologies rapidly change, education systems should keep up and come up with better strategies to protect our teachers and students from the negative effects of disinformation. Here are our references. The researchers would also like to thank our volunteer teacher facilitators, FSL interpreters, and technical team members during the series of workshops we conducted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Teacher Junette, Lorina, and Karen. I invite you to please turn on your microphones and cameras to join us here in the plenary. I'm very honored to have been part of your facilitator team. So let's wait for Lorina and Yan and Teacher Lorina to be spotlighted also. Okay. So teachers, do you think that there has been a directed attempt, talagang a focused attempt to mislead teachers?
Wala pa naman, we don't have any data or information yet that systematically targets teachers. So, wala kaming data noon. Pero we know na merong tina-target. Junette will share the info on that, na kung sino talaga yung tina-target. Sige, Junette, pakituloy ito. Kasi
Yes, teacher.
specific to teachers.
Parang according to the study by Ong and Cabañez, parang meron talagang tina-target population. So mass-based influencers, mas socio-economic, so lower socio-economic, then middle-class-based or pseudo-intellectuals. Parang may naka-assign na influencer, may naka-assign na malakas ang hatak to spread the disinformation sa different socio-economic classes. Pero in terms of targeting teachers, parang wala pa. Or hindi specific to the teachers. But yes, very vulnerable ang teachers kasi included siya dun sa classes, no?
Yeah.
Sa overall classes.
May curriculum ba yung disinformation na linalabas? Meron ba yung parang is there explicit or systematic content that they are trying to popularize?
First, Teacher Lorina, yung gusto nilang basagin yung trust sa institutions, like Teacher Lorina mentioned. So yun yung, I think, first step or first strategy nila. Kaya we ask the questions na ano yung mga pinapaniwalaan yung sites? Ano yung pinapaniwalaan yung sources of information? Kasi, kunwari, ang mainstream media, di ba kumalat sa Philippines na biased, di ba? Nagiging fake news peddlers daw, yung mismong news agencies. But they actually follow standards, di ba? Of reporting, of journalism. So, yun means, parang doon nag-start, binasag yung ganyang institutions, yung trust mo sa ganyang paniniwala sa news. And then, wala, pangkalat sa mga different areas.
Yeah, oo. Kasi statements like, research kayo ng research. Puro research ang alam nyo. Pagbasag yun di ba? Pagbasag yun sa systematic process of understanding social phenomena, understanding society, understanding how people learn, no? Statements like that undermine scientific processes, no? We have a question on Q&A. Salamat sa nagtanong. Magtanong pa kayo. Given your research and knowing that both students and teachers need to develop their digital competence, especially for misinformation and disinformation, what can educational institutions do in designing their programs or efforts? Thank you for this question.
Yeah. Karamihan sa mga efforts to teach disinformation, wala kasing example, walang parang practice Itong mas gusto natin kasi direkta na ang hinahawakan ng bata ay fake news itself na ine-evaluate niya. Kasi karamihan sa mga design, magsasabi lang ng steps, anong gagawin. Pero ang mas makakatulong sa aking palagay ay yung actual na pag-e-evaluate ng fake news. Dahil ito ang makakatulong sa kanila na matuto talagang mag-evaluate. Yung totoong example na nakikita nila. Kasi if we will just be telling them the rules na wala naman siyang backed up na totoong example, mahihirapan din sila.
Mm. Would you like to add anything? Karen, when you were in college, meron bang effort for digital literacy in high school and college when you were a student?
Parang wala, teach. As far as I remember.
Yeah, so where did you learn your critical thinking for that?
Dito sa ERP po.
Naku, konti lang tayo. Ano ba yan? Okay, Junette?
It's parang one strategy then for educational institutions to have a group of experts curate reliable sources. Parang a mesh of fact checkers. Tapos one theory teach inoculation theory. Parang the more you are exposed to fake news, the more that you know that it's present there. At saka pinakita rin ng ating research, no? Parang kailangan across platforms, baka education institutions can lead that. No? Parang kunwari, yung TikTok ngayon, yung platforms, 1-minute videos, kailangan experts, education experts sasabay doon. Parang kasi yun ang ginagamit ngayon ng mga tao, 'di ba? Parang yan yung inuubos, inaalmusal ng mga bata, ng mga ng mga teachers natin. So parang sasabay dapat yung teaching sa different platforms.
So kailangan talagang mag-produce ng content, no, that provides real information. There's a question here from Mark. What do you think are the prospects of integrating digital literacy in our curriculum, whether basic or higher ed, considering that the ones doing the pencil pushing at the highest level are political appointees who have partisan inclinations?
Pero ang direkta namang nagtuturo ay tayong mga teachers. Parang nasa atin pa rin yung power to teach digital literacy. So, they are for digital literacy. I think hindi naman nila tayo pinagbabawalan na magturo ng digital literacy. Ayaw din nila ng fake news. So, the power is within our hands. We school teachers inside the classroom should teach digital literacy. Parang nasa atin pa rin ang kapangyarihan sa aking paniniwala. Kaya nga kailangan tayong kailangan i-empower ang mga guro na humaharap sa loob ng silid-aralan o ng classroom.
Teacher Portia has a comment. UP Diliman Office for the Advancement of Teaching would like to develop critical thinking champions. It has conducted 2 webinars for faculty so far. Thank you for this, Teacher Portia. All right. If there are no more questions, is there a last message from this group? No, I think this group is very important in communicating to our audience. Siguro ano po ba yung steps to be able to know whether something is fake online?
Ako sisimulan ko lang muna sa magduda ka agad. Ang unang-unang step talaga is when you are confronted with an information, huwag agad maniniwala, kundi pagdudahan mo agad ito. Totoo ba ito? Yun palagi nating skeptical resilience, yung term na ginamit natin sa ating workshop. It has remained the first strategy. Una, huwag agad magtiwala sa impormasyon na kaharap mo. Siguro itutuloy ni Junette ito para dun sa steps.
Um, sorry, Teach.
Sorry.
Yung wag magtiwala at saka kailangan alamin mo yung konteksto ng online information. Parang ano yung motive? Kasi parang kanina meron tayong mga items na yung akala mo safe lang, akala mo ito lang yung dahilan, pero hindi pala. Parang hindi mo na-check yung motive, yung intention ng post. So baka doon medyo tingnan natin kung paano ito mangyayari.
And probably the evidence they are presenting, i-check mo yung ebidensya kasi mahalaga din yon na meron ngang ebidensya pero mali naman pala yung inihaharap nila na ebidensya.
Talagang counter-check everything, fact-check everything. Yeah. Okay, so everybody, may I join you all to give lots of hearts and claps for Teacher Lorina, Junette, and Karen. Thank you very much.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
Thank you.